Welcome, everyone. This is your brother from another mother, Mark DeJesus, giving you insight and tools into your healing and freedom journey. You'll have to excuse me. I'm a little bit under the weather, so you'll hear it in my voice a bit more nasally this time around. So thank you for understanding. So in this episode, I want to get into the subject of anger and talk about anger for a little bit and some other things. I'm going to actually use a question that was sent in as a basis for discussion today. And it's been a while since I've done some Q&A kind of stuff, and I want to do some more of that. And I find I enjoy reading through emails and providing feedback. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through this email, this question, and I'm just going to comment and get feedback. I don't know this person. I'm just going by what I'm reading, but I think there's some good talking points that are helpful for us as believers. I talk a lot about obsessive compulsive. I talk a lot about mental health. And there's a couple reasons why I'm so passionate about it. One, it's been a part of my journey, a major part of my journey. Two, I see so much of what I talk about in mental health amongst the body of Christ. Whether someone's officially diagnosed or would be diagnosed, that's not even the point. I think we can all benefit from healing our hearts, being renewed in areas of our lives, and allowing God's ways of healing and restoring to impact our mental health. I don't think mental health is a side subject for these people over here. And unfortunately, that's what it's become. Oh, they've got mental health issues. Oh, that person has mental health issues. And I want to say, yeah, so do you. We all do. It's a spectrum. We all have areas in our life that need tender attention and need encouragement, need equipping. None of us are perfect. No one has perfect mental health. We all have areas in our life that need encouragement, that need really the healing presence of God's love to have an impact in our lives. So today I'm going to get into the area of anger and perspectives that make us really obsessive compulsive about anger issues, but I think this can be beneficial to everyone because as believers, we haven't always been given healthy perspectives on how to deal with anger. Anger starts to rise up and we get afraid. We get scared of it because we don't know what to do with it. We haven't been taught, and we don't realize that anger can often be places where we discover deeper things about our journey in our life with God. And with other people in relationship. But when obsessive compulsive gets into the picture, it really twists things and gets things off the rails. And so all that to say, I think we could all benefit from what I'm going to share. And what I'm going to do is just read the email, respond to it as I did when I was first reading it, and kind of take some of those tangents with you, allow you to benefit from this. And we'll let the Father's heart just wash over everything that's said and done here. And so I pray the compassion and grace that is available here will be extended to your life and to your journey. Okay. So, Lord willing, the creek don't rise. The creek hasn't risen, so we'll dive into this. Thank you. Hello, Mark. Thank you so much for your ministry. You often say things that I need to remember, and you remind me of the depths of Christ's love. Awesome. That's great. A couple of years ago, I started struggling with anger. I'm not an angry person. At least I didn't think I was. And most people would consider me to be low-key and at the same time an empath that carries a lot of burdens. I want you all to know that because of my experience with obsessive compulsive and just a lot of mental health struggles, my radar picks up on things very early. So even as I'm reading this email, this person didn't say to me, I'm obsessive compulsive, but I can see early on the signals of it. I have a feeling this is leading towards obsessive compulsive perspective, meaning obsession over a disturbing subject. This is unwanted. It gets highlighted. It gets looked at and interrogated very intensely. And then there's some type of compulsion that we fall into, certain mental things that we do, certain practices to try to feel better. And then we're in this constant spinning and spinning and spinning. It goes on. And so even in the early stages, I can see the rumblings here because I see this, this highlight over anger. It's understandable. We're all, wanting to work through anger. We're wanting to we're wanting to, not let anger, take hold. So what she's sharing here is that you're an empath, which means you're highly sensitive. You feel emotions. That I talk about highly sensitive people in my book, The Heart Healing Journey. I have a chapter there about working through the healing journey while having a sensitive heart. I've talked about that in my own life and my own journey. You can look up those articles. You can see those in the chapters in the book. And so right up front here, an empath that carries a lot of burdens. And off the jump, I'm already, okay, you're very sensitive, so you carry a lot of stuff you shouldn't carry. Jesus said in his scripture, in his exhortation, "Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for my yoke is easy, my yoke is light." So if you find yourself emotionally burdened down, you're taking on burdens you shouldn't carry. That right there is a recipe for increased anger, is false responsibility, carrying burdens, a false burden bearing. A lot of us carry burdens that God's not saying, that's not yours to carry. And Jesus is saying, when you notice the burdens, the things that you carry that I'm calling you to carry, you're going to notice a lightness. There's a greater ease. He said, my burden's easy, my burden's light. Does he say life is going to be easy? What he's saying is, he's saying the things I'm giving you to carry as you learn from me, there's so much wrapped into that exhortation that's powerful. You're going to notice your burden is going to be lighter. And whether you're obsessive compulsive or not, many of our mental health battles come down to things that we're carrying internally that God's not putting on us. But anxiety and guilt and shame and these rejection issues cause us to carry stuff that he's not called us to carry. So right off the jump, this is already, piling up. You see, I extract a lot out of sentences, I know, but I'm just kind of walking with you through so many of the factors that go on in what we're working through. And we haven't even gotten, to the issue yet in the way that she's expressing it here. Okay, so an empath that carries a lot of burdens. Many people have said, I am caring, giving, and patient. I do go, okay, is perfectionism here? Because with perfectionism, we have a presentation that we carry to others, that we do the right thing, we're always caring, we always respond well. It's just a question. If they see those things in me, then I know that it is from the Lord. It is not me. Now, I have to call a flag here. This is a statement that is often said amongst Christian circles that I gotta throw the flag on it, because we have this differentiation. This happened, that was good, that was wonderful, Mark. It wasn't me. It was the Lord. Somehow we've created this world that there's things you do and there's things the Lord does, and they are separate. They're not go hand in hand. And this, in my opinion, can be a recipe to promote a greater lack of mental health in our life. This is a area that Christians are constantly trying to dissect that's making us lose our sanity. Was that me? Was it God? Was it me? Was it God? Me, God. Did I do that? Did God do that? So when something good happens, it's the Lord, not me. When something bad happens, it is me. This is me. I'm evil. I'm just full of evil. So it creates a lot of torment because it doesn't allow us to celebrate God at work in us. So as believers, the Holy Spirit is within us, at work within us. God is working in and through us. The scriptures resonate this about he who began a good work in you will be faithful to complete that. God, there's so many scriptures that talk about in him we live and move and have our being. We are connected to God. So up front, what I see here is when we say, if they see those good things in me, it's not me. this person has a hard time receiving unconditional love, receiving celebration, affirmation. It's an unworthiness issue. We struggle in being loved right where we are. And I had to cross this threshold of not giving into that, oh, it wasn't me, it was God, or when somebody would compliment me, I would respond with all the flaws that are there. This is what perfectionism does. And perfectionism drives people into OCD. If you have any obsessive compulsive issues, you have perfectionism. Not maybe, not possibly, you have perfectionism issues. And perfectionism doesn't allow you to receive love because it disqualifies you constantly. And as Christians, we find fancy ways to disqualify ourselves and actually live out of self-hate and actually call things humility when it's not. It's self-rejection. It's an unworthiness. And when love comes to us, we push back. So if here's my counsel to you up front. If people see good things in you that you're caring, giving, and patient, instead of saying it's not you, it's the Lord, say thank you. Acknowledge when people give genuine compliments. Appreciate that, because it's not me, it's the Lord, creates a lot of confusion in people. And it's like, it's God working in your life. And you are connected and partnered with him. And yes, you take steps to be caring. You could not be caring and not do it. And you partnered with it. And so I think sometimes our spirituality clouds things over, where it doesn't allow us to just have a real interaction that says, you know what? Thank you. Okay. So again, I'm pulling these out of sentences, but these are important things for us to understand in our journey. All right. I will continue reading. Prior to 2020, I would say that I was a peaceful person and patient. So 2020 is obviously a time where a lot of things changed. We had this whole pandemic thing roll out. A lot of things shifted and changed. So a lot of transitions happened in people's lives. There was a lot of isolation. There was a lot of social tensions, a lot of political tensions. There was a lot of family tensions. There's all kinds of stuff that was going on. So that requires a lot of patience and recognizing, okay, I've got to be kind and compassionate to myself because a lot was going on. Okay, so prior to 2020, I would say that I was a peaceful person and patient. I had such a desire to be in ministry. I felt that I was emotionally healthy for the most part. Around April 2020, I began to feel irritable feelings. Well, I would say around April 2020, a lot of people felt irritable feelings. I told a friend that I felt like I was becoming an irritable person, and they were surprised. So I already sense up front, it's like, irritability, this is like unacceptable. I cannot be irritable, and I'm sharing this because it's unacceptable. And then the other person is like, oh, I've never seen you irritable. This is where when we live as perfectionists, we also have a relationship with the world that feeds that. So many of us, and I've experienced this in my own journey, where it's like I didn't make an allowance for anger or irritability in my life. So therefore, I lived in such a way where no one's ever going to see that. So if they ever saw an irritable moment, first of all, I would have shame. How dare I act this way? How dare I be irritable? And then they were like, oh, how is Mark acting this way? Because they were used to only one way of living with perfectionistic Mark that doesn't feel all these things. And I realized I needed an overhaul. I need to make more room for the weak areas of my life, that some days I have bad days and some days I'm going through things. And the more I'm okay with that, it allows me to interact with people in a real way. I'm more comfortable with what I'm going through emotionally. And therefore other people, when they experience that, they realize too that I have bad days and have bad moments. But perfectionistic tendencies don't allow for that. They don't allow for you to have bad moments. Therefore, you shame yourself, and then you go into a downward spiral where you can't see what's going on in your life because you're like, how dare I be irritable or even have irritable moments? And I think what I want to get into a little bit too is this: we become obsessive compulsive about signs of anger. And so any moment we feel an anger, we got to like interrogate it. We got to examine it. And then we have a very hard time letting it go. And I've noticed in my life and in people I've worked with, there can be this obsessive compulsive about examining your anger. And every little blip of anger, every little blip of offense has to be examined and has to be looked at. And one of the scriptures that could be very, very helpful is where the Bible speaks about it is the glory of a person to overlook an offense, meaning that it's actually power like the glory of God to be able to see something that could offend you, trigger you, and go, I'm going to let that slide. It's a very powerful, like superhero trait to be able to carry in our lives. But I think we live in a day and age, if you're obsessive and compulsive, you can be easily angered over things. You have to examine it. You have to talk it out. You have to resolve it. It has to be forgiven. That person has to ask for forgiveness. You have to speak it out, talk it out. And it leads you into this, pathway that keeps you really, really bound. And it makes your relationships not very healthy. I think culturally too, we're becoming obsessed with being outraged. If something bothers us, we got to examine it. It's got to be justified. We've got to speak it out. We've got to share it out. We've got to tell this person. I can see when people are obsessive compulsive about what they're angry about, they got to really write it out to me. They got to really explain what they're angry about. They really get it out there. And another thing, by the way, and is it showing that they have trapped up anger issues? For sure. But I think it's revealing that in our inner world, anything that triggers anger, we feel like needs a hyper examination over. And many times we need to let anger kind of work its way through us, because anger is often just a signal that we need to be kinder to ourselves. And that emotion could mean nothing. It could mean you just had a bad night of sleep, but you can't see that unless you're kinder to the anger when it arises. So going back to the irritability. So you're irritable. It's all right that you're irritable. You don't have to hey, I think I'm going to be irritable. I think this is going to be bad. I think it's going to be, but Mark, I've been angry for like a week, or I've been irritable for, okay, all right. Let's practice a new response to it. Let's be kind to it. And let's see what happens. Because for most of us, it's not okay that you're not okay. And then we spin and spin and spin and spin about this. I'm speaking to somebody today. Okay, recently I got married. So here's another transition. Getting back to the email here. It's another transition in life, major transition. So marriage is going to bring out many issues that you probably have not recognized or dealt with yet, because now you have someone you're in covenant with. You can't run now. Well, some people still do. You have to deal with those things now. Intimate relationship brings out deeper areas of our life and cause us to bring out where God's like, okay, I'm going to mature you. I'm going to heal you in a deeper way. And we need to be able to say, okay, it's time for me to respond to that. I need to grow in how I relate. I find that I am affected deeply by the moods of others. I fear conflict, though I try to engage it when necessary. There were things that happened in our dating relationship that really hurt me. I forgave, yet sometimes in our marriage, when conflict is evident, these memories are triggered and fear kicks in, which leads to feelings of hurt and anger again. So what I would share to you as feedback is that there hasn't been a proper equipping in your life on how to process through anger. So it gets hyper examined in a way that's not fruitful. I have a lot of people that write to me. They're like, I have this anger issue and this thing of the past. And it's like, I'm pinging about it. It's because I haven't forgiven good enough yet. And I'm like, I think this is obsessive. You feel this anger and you diagnose it harshly, and you don't let yourself work through actually feeling anger, but not having to do something about it. It's like, this anger is unacceptable. I got to get rid of it immediately. That was my journey. The anger was fueled out of perfectionistic pressure. With perfectionism, you have anger. So you're easily triggered because you're in a constant state of pressurized living. So when it gets poked, the bear comes out. And then you beat yourself up for the because there's no allowance for you to let something that angers you float through you. We have to be more, when anger kicks up, we have to more notice it versus interrogating. Oh, look, I'm a little bit angry right now. All right, I see that. I don't need to hyper evaluate it right now. Okay, I'm going to be loving and kind to it. Is there something I need to be aware of? Okay, it's not evident to me right now. Okay, I'll keep moving on. You see, that's actually a healthy lifestyle. Don't misinterpret from me that every emotion you're feeling, you got to put a microscope on. Now, when you're sitting with a counselor or something, sometimes that microscope comes up and that might be time to do that. Sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's not, depending on, where things are going and where and how things are being examined, right? So that's the thing that comes up for me so far as I'm reading this. Again, I'm getting the signals of this could be an obsessive compulsive kind of perspective over that. Again, I'm flowing with this email as I did when I read it the first time, walking you through how I'm reading, through this email. All right. So I often tell, complain to, so I often tell, and then in parentheses, complain to ? So I'm getting the impression you don't know the difference if you're telling or complaining. I often tell, or is it complaining, to the Lord of my angers and hurts. Okay, and this is going to definitely bring out where Christians feel like if they express anger to God or frustration, like you've crossed the line and you have now committed the unpardonable sin. You have now, you've gone too far and now you're doomed. So I often cry out to him about the hurts, frustrations I've experienced in marriage. And folks, there are a lot of spouses that are angry with their spouse, and you're a perfectionist. And you have these standards you live by, they're intense, and you're constantly struggling with anger. That if you find yourself constantly being triggered over the same thing, there's a major problem in the marriage. I'm not negating that. Okay, that could be there. There's a whole list of things we could get into. But we also have to look at, are you a perfectionist? Because do you get triggered by a lot of little details? Well, Mark, how do I know the difference? Well, do you get triggered over a lot of little things constantly where it kind of steals your peace and steals your everyday movement? Okay, you got perfectionism at work because you hold people to those standards. They disappoint you constantly, so you're constantly angry about it. This is why I talk so much about perfectionism. It is the mindset of just right, and you need things just right. When we get into marriage, it brings out perfectionism issues because you hold your spouse to be something rather than seeing your spouse, this is where they're at, and we're working to get on the same page together, and I got to learn how to love in the midst of this. Okay? I'm not advocating tolerating abuse and all that stuff because people write to me, well, what about if your spouse is abusing you? No, this is not accepting abuse. But I get the sense here there's a lot of little details, a lot of things in story that get held, and that perfectionism holds on to it because you can't be at peace unless it's completely resolved, but it's never completely resolved. That's obsessive compulsive. I don't hear anybody talking about this. That's why I'm bringing this to the surface. Okay. I cry out to him about the hurts, frustrations I've experienced in my marriage. Some things I've brought to my husband's attention, but others I think it's best to just take to the Lord. I don't want to expose the weaknesses of others, so I don't give details to others. With that said, I go to a Christian counselor. Yet I haven't been able to communicate the deep things that really hurt. That is only for the Lord. Yeah, I don't know that. I don't know that I have a yay or nay. There's things, it's only for the Lord. Sometimes it's a blanket statement. So I'll just leave that. I won't comment on that right now. My husband is a good man. He's a kind man. Yet he has experienced a lot of hurts over the years. Sometimes it's hard because I want to be able to help out, but I carry my own burdens. I feel very tired. We are both sensitive. INFJ types. That's a personality profile. INFJ types. So you're probably, you're more in the consult arena. You're able to hear people's problems. You're able to empathize with them. It's hard to address issues. We not only hurt each other at times, but we carry our own condemnation about the ways in which we have failed each other. So my profile in the personality types is INFJ. Yeah, is it INFJ? Yeah. And it was very, very helpful for me to understand ways that I process certain things. But there's something that we have to understand that really steals the life of this personality type that's very sensitive, very empathetic, is this perfectionism kind of thing. Because it can make you very obsessive compulsive about your emotions and easily spinning about stuff. So you're both very sensitive. We not only hurt each other at times, but we carry our own condemnation about the way in which you failed each other. That very much exemplifies perfectionistic kind of influences, because it's like, I've wronged you, that is unacceptable, and I'm condemning myself over you're hurt by it, and you've said that to me, and it is unacceptable how I've acted towards you. So you're like two pressurized people that don't know how to let stuff go. And that is a big part of obsessive compulsive, is that it's hard to let things go in general, hard to let thoughts go, let emotions go. And so you're saying your husband's a good man. He's a kind man. Okay. So we're not talking about somebody here who's being abusive to you, who's got, all kinds of destructive ways. See, you're both very sensitive. You're both wanting to grow. You easily, can get, triggered off in certain issues. My wife and I both carry, intense sensitivity. We both have sensitive hearts, both have obsessive tendencies, both have perfectionistic tendencies that go in different directions. And we've had to learn about how to let go of things and let go of things and let go of things and learn to love and be compassionate and not give attention to every little detail of what bugs you. Because here's what you notice. When you give attention to everything that bugs you, then you start giving more attention, then more attention, then more attention, then more attention. And now you have to have a meeting over every little thing that bugs you. And this is where it's like perfectionism and OCD is taking over. Okay? The reason I'm writing to you is the following. So I haven't even gotten to your question yet. And I believe the top of the question, the title, was more fear. Addressing the fear. I'm responding to it, as you can see, a whole different way here, even though I think there's going to be some fear questions here. I'm writing to you as the following. My husband is so happy being married to me. That's amazing. That's good. I do not regret marrying my husband. Okay. So I can't help but comment on this. I see the perfectionistic thing coming in. My husband is happy being married to me. There's no, I'm happy being married to my husband. I just have some struggles. It's like, he's happy. I don't regret. I'm seeing the obsession. And again, honestly, as I'm reading this is what's coming up for me. However, I'm struggling with the transition. Right. It's okay. It's okay. Marriage is a big transition. We need to give ourselves time to learn how to relate, to learn how to love, to learn how to talk through things, to learn to go, yeah, I'm over talking this. I don't need to talk about this. To go, yeah, I can just let that go. That this isn't something I need to talk out with him or even talk out with God. I can just let this go. And I can learn to just flow in the fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness. That's really the mark of maturity. Also, I find myself getting hurt about things or getting angry, mostly due to fear issues. Correct. Where we are anxious, fearful, we often respond in anger. Many times that anger lash out is a stress response. It's a fear response. 100%, it can be a major, major factor. If you bring in perfectionism and OCD, that's heightened. It's super heightened. That anxious, because then you're constantly disturbed, and guilt and anxiety surrounds that area, okay? I find myself getting hurt about things or getting angry. When I do, I tell the Lord. And I'm going to say something to you that most pastors and minister type people wouldn't say. I don't know necessarily that you need to tell the Lord every time you get angry. That actually can just be a compulsion. I got to tell him. There is an aspect. Anger is, first of all, anger is not sin. The Bible says, be angry and do not sin. We hyperventilate and focus in on do not sin. Okay, it's do not sin. And we didn't even hear the first sentence. That's what OCD does with the Bible. Like, we don't even hear the love part. We're like, in the depart from me, I never knew you. Okay, we didn't hear anything else. we hear the judgment. We hear this. We hear hell. We hear unpardonable. We didn't hear the last 3 chapters. We didn't hear any of this. We just hear this. We see things through distortions. And one of the things that was helpful for me is realizing, I get this anger thing triggering up a lot. This is a perfectionistic thing. This is my discipleship is actually learning to let the anger grow through me. And if I see a pattern of it stacking up, looking at it compassionately and going, where can I be kinder to myself to see this the way that I need to see it? So that love can surround it so I can see myself and this other person through love. Because if I'm not seeing myself and the other person through love, this anger, this obsession, all this stuff's just going to take over. Okay? When I do, I'll go back to the email. When I do, I tell the Lord. The problem is I tell the Lord these things too much, I think. I didn't know that sentence was coming up. I love it when the flow just leads right up to it. Honestly, I did not know that next sentence was coming up. So, okay. So I think we're taking this plane up to 30,000 feet now. Now we're getting into the deeper atmospheric places, right? Right. This is probably a compulsion. I'm angry. God, I got to take it out. This thing upsets me, but you understand, you help me. And it's like, maybe just let it go. Learn to pass on through. Okay, Mark, I'm going to let it go. I can't let it go. It's back. That's how OCD works. It's like gently, I'm going to learn to love. So what you need to do is identify that you have an obsession over anger. It's tied to perfectionism. And your compulsion is you must talk it out. So you got to get it solved. So we're going to starve that. You don't have to talk it out. You don't have to say it out all the time. Anger kicks up, you're going to start letting it float through. And when you first practice that, you're going to feel very disturbed. I need to do something about this. Let it go, and keep practicing, let it go. We're going to practice, let it go. I'm not going to obsess about this anymore. Let it go, because I'm learning God's unconditional love. Anyways, let me get back. Can't be joking. This is serious, Mark. Excuse me. My congestion. Don't want to be breathing my congestion all over your ears. I do not. Okay. The problem is I tell the Lord these things too much. I do not treat my husband out of those hurts and angers, or at least I try not to, which is great, but this stuff is bottling up in you, right? It's like and that's part of perfectionism. I'm not gonna respond to you out of this anger, but no, it's building. That's why a lot of times people can feel anger around perfectionists, even though they're not manifesting it. They're not being directly angry, but they can kind of feel the fumes. It's like the steam's coming out of your ears. And they're like, you okay? You're like, I'm good. I'm good because I don't respond. I'm not letting this anger control me. Because perfectionists don't have a good relationship with anger or with any flaws. Period. However, okay, so your husband says, even he says, I am patient and love him well. However, when he says that about me, I feel like I'm lying or being a hypocrite because of the things I carry inside. Okay, so you feel this anger, you go black and white on yourself. He sees you're patient and loving. You go black and white because you feel shamed about the struggle you have with this anger on the inside, this perfectionistic, intense standard that things need to be just right. And anything that messes, that creates a disturbance, what is it like? What is it, those Star Wars movies? There's a disturbance in the Force. I feel the disturbance. That's the life of OCD, by the way. There's a disturbance. And someone else like, no, there isn't. Yes. I felt an angry spike inside of me. It's all right. You're okay. No. This must be investigated immediately. You got to let me joke. So he said, you feel like you're being a hypocrite. So you feel this imposter syndrome. And maybe that's due to you have to present something that's always on point. And it doesn't allow you to just be yourself. And what's being yourself? That you're flawed. You have days where you're off. You have days where you're angry. You have days you're afraid. It's all right. That's the new level. You said earlier you want to be in ministry. That's really effective ministry. Don't follow the models out there where it's like everything's perfect, everything's great, and say everything great, sentences great, and amazing presentations. That's setting people up for being really emotionally unhealthy, because then you serve that stage, make sure that image is there. You need a constant PR director to make sure everything's presented in a certain way. And my wife and I really try to interrupt that, because it's like we're going to establish being ourselves in our journey, in our flaws. We're going to make room for that. And not every presentation is perfect. Not everything that's given is perfect. Even if you notice, I have certain videos that I'll do that might be shorter. I kind of edit them and so forth. But a lot of these are more long form, me talking. I hit record and then I hit stop and I post it. Whether I said all the sentences the way that I wanted to or said everything the way, because this is a journey. I'm on a journey and you're on a journey. Okay. So there's this image we present to the world, and then we realize inside I've got struggles. So it creates this conflict, right? And I'm not saying you have to tell the world your flaws, but we have to become more at peace that we have great things, we have evil things, we have great things of wholeness, great things of, and also things of brokenness. And God is lovingly embracing all of that. Perfectionism says, no. So this perfectionism accuses you to yourself, and you become self-condemned and guilty. And what we need to do is make you more at peace and give a big hug to your weaknesses. That you have fear and you have anger. You have fear. You have anger. Welcome to the everybody's. What's the everybody's? It's all of us. We all have those kinds of issues. And so there's no allowance for that in you, so it creates a disturbance, yet there's flaws, yet there's a presentation you try to be to other people. So your husband's just giving you feedback of, hey, you're loving, you're great, you're very kind. But there's that unworthiness I talked about earlier. Can't receive love when it's given to you, because I gotta be on point. And anything that's not on point, I'm pointing as I'm saying on point. And that's not on point, it's unacceptable. Okay? Sure, back to the email. Sure, I have loved him with my actions, even when I am upset. But inside, I have these negative thoughts, and I hate that. I hate feeling anger. Ladies and gentlemen, we've just come to the ground zero of the battle. Anger is not the problem. Fear is not the problem. It's having that is unacceptable. I will not be loved and at peace if I have any presence of this in my life. So love is always conditional. Love gets pushed away. So I feel like a hypocrite. That bothers me. You know how we break out of being a hypocrite? We remove what we present from what's really going on. We let it all tear down. And we start going, you know what? You got problems, I got problems too. There is not an issue that I see in people's lives that I don't go, yeah, I could be right in that same battle that you're in. Most of what I'm reading here, I relate to. And I wasn't given an allowance, nor did I give myself an allowance to be able to be weak, flawed through issues. So it's not your battle, it's your hatred over it. And it's really a self-hatred issue of not loving yourself the way that God loves you. He looks at you right now, sister, with deep eyes of love in your strengths and in your goofiness. He doesn't just love you where you're doing great. He loves all of you, all the way, all the time. And that makes perfectionistic people squirm inside. How could that even be true? The second thing that bothers me, back to the email, we're going to get into some bothers. Getting into your bothers, what bothers you. The second thing that bothers me, and I've begun to obsess over it. I knew it was coming. I just, when I read it and I saw this obsessed word, I just see how you kind of see the signs coming as you're reading, you're leading up to this. I'm obsessed over is that when I've been praying to the Lord about things that anger me, I usually talk out loud. I realized that my phone was next to me when I was confessing those things to the Lord. I often feared that my phone was recording me, and then those confessions would be exposed one day and used against me in some way by the government. Right? So, okay, I know that sounds insane. So that is a classic statement said by people who struggle with obsessive compulsive issues. I know that sounds insane. Mark, I'm going to tell you this, and I know it sounds crazy, right? I feel like my phone's yeah, our phones are recording us. Yeah, these things are listening when they shouldn't be, right? We're discovering that more and more, right? The point is not, is the phone listening to you? You know, people have said, I was having a conversation with somebody about wanting to buy a new mattress. And then all of a sudden there's in my news feed things about mattresses, right? Right? And we all go, what's going on? Who's listening, right? So what we have to understand, so Mark, tell me, what are your thoughts about our phones listening to us? What do you think? The problem is not the problem. The problem is not whether your phones are listening to you. What you're manifesting is obsessive compulsive, where really you expressing your anger or you being angry is really unacceptable. And if we were to just apply unconditional love of you're angry, it's okay that you're angry. You don't have to react to it, interrogate it, solve it, research it. Just feel it and go through the roller coaster. I just feel angry. It's all right. I'm all right. Let the anger, because I get the impression you've never let yourself go through the roller coaster. Let the anger flow through you and out of you. It doesn't need to stay. It's not going to stay, but you've got some work in how you see yourself through love. That's the issue. So it's creating a deeper sense of hypervigilance and now even paranoia of I'm talking out loud and now my phone's listening, right? And sometimes when it comes to obsessive compulsive pathways, it's good to just expose yourself to okay, yeah, let's say all our phones just turn on us and they announce everything we do. Okay. All right. Then we'll face that then. Now, many people hyperventilate because they have a very intense punishment-based relationship with God, that makes them, those kind of thoughts terrify them. Remember, the problem's not the problem. It's really how you relate to God. I remember back in younger years, and maybe this is still applied today, when I would hear preaching, there's a thing that would said every now and then, and I think I even said it too in my days, where we'd say, can you imagine if we took everything you thought and we put it on a projector and showed every image and everything that you thought about, and the whole congregation would kind of, lean down. No, I've had crazy thoughts. They're going to be up on the wall. Everyone's going to see it, right? And that's kind of our imagery of like Judgment Day. Every thought we've had is going to be put up there. Everything that's passed through, everything, oh no, right? It's an easy way to infect people with fear and get a quick response out of them. It's manipulative. And what it does is it injects people with fear and injects people with shame and guilt so that they can't understand how to relate to their thoughts in gracious ways. Like, let me put some fear on you. Now you're going to listen, right? And then we're like, oh, what do I do? What do I do? Right? Just a fear-based tactic. It's really about your relationship with God. Our government's corrupt? Yes. Are there all kinds of things going on? Yes. But it's not about that. It's about your personal safety in God, your safety within yourself that needs a new, nurturing, loving perspective. It's okay that you're angry. It's okay that you're not okay. You're newly married. These past couple of years have been tough on the whole world. You're going through some stuff. It's not about fixing your thoughts. It's about having a kinder relationship with your thoughts. It's not about just fixing your anger right now. Over time, if your husband says, you know what, you're a very angry person, you got some anger issues, you have someone that knows you well that really brings it out, we could get to that. But I would say that's not what's going on here. Anger is really you being angry at yourself and not giving yourself an allowance. You give other people maybe some room, wiggle room, but even then you can get uptight with other people very easily, right? Obsessing over the issues, right? That go back to, like, sometimes we can obsess over certain issues that go back to our rejection wounds. I talk about that, exposing the rejection mindset, right? Where rejection gets us hung up in a distorted filter. That goes back to our abandonment issues. Go back, and people can have abandonment is a very intense, broken place in our life. And we can go to all sorts of mental health battles. It goes into all different kinds of areas that we can get spun out on. But it can make us obsessed over offenses because it's like, I don't know that I can land in this relationship because maybe they won't love me and I'll be alone. All this is pointing you back to learning what it means to be loved. That you're safe right now, right where you're at. And okay, the government's listening to you. Okay, that sounds insane. Let's bring that down in love. That's all right. I do get a kick out of it. And, we could dissect that, but that's not the problem. Is not the problem. You have a fear, then they would play those things for my husband and he would be hurt and leave me. There's the abandonment. Here's the abandonment. And so I'm praying that Father God will heal that place of abandonment. That's painful. So your abandonment issues have perfectionism tied into it. Because abandonment is parents physically leaving or emotionally not being there for you, neglecting you, not being there for you when you were traumatized or when you were neglected. There's many different pathways this can happen. Out of that, you become a perfectionist. I'm going to do things just right because that's how I will be loved. That's how it will be accepted. It's a lie from the pit of hell. But our evil stepdad, Satan, who wants to be our daddy, he's not our daddy. He's the father of lies. And where does he inject lies? Where we haven't been loved, where we haven't been nurtured, where we haven't been taught the safety of what it means to relate to our Father in heaven, the price that Jesus paid for, the grace towards us, the identity God's given us. Satan is always seeking to infiltrate all that, right? And that's at the root system. So you actually expressed here in this sentence, this is going to be, the government's going to take my phone, going to amplify it, play everything I've said. Everyone's going to hear. So it means the image of what people see will change. And I will say to that, so what? They heard all your venting. What are they going to do? Throw stones because they're sinless? Please. Please. So it shows the relationship you have with yourself that needs healing. And then he would be hurt and leave me. That's the abandonment issue. I'm not sure how to find peace on this issue. It's about learning to be loved right where you are. And that is why I wrote the book, God Loves Me and I Love Myself, because I realized God loves me, but I'm having a hard time receiving it. And I'm having a hard time receiving it and giving it to myself in the midst of thoughts and battles. Loving yourself is not what people make it. It's not lovers of themselves like Paul warned about. It's none of that. None of that. It's seeing yourself the way that God sees you and letting love lead you through the resistance that causes you to see yourself with hostility. Lastly, we'll close this. I fear that the Lord will expose those complaints because it is sinful to complain. I'm going to read that the way I think it probably plays out in your mind. Lastly, I fear that the Lord will expose those complaints because it is sinful to complain. There's the harsh intensity that takes a concept. Could we say it's sinful to complain? Sure. Then it's like this requires punishment. The problem is there's complaining in everyone. Everyone complains out loud or in their heads. We all have journeys of learning to get negativity out of our life. He does expose our sin, right? Which is her next sentence, right? So this shows your relationship with God. He's a God who exposes sin. You can't mess up. You better watch out. You better watch out. You better not cry. You better not pout. I'm telling you why. This is your relationship to God. He sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. He knows when you've been bad or good. So be good for goodness sake, right? There's that fear-based relationship with God. So those concepts lose context. A friend of mine once said that the Lord keeps to himself the things we shared with him privately, just like a friend. I guess. I think this sentence is important to you because you've been betrayed. You've probably not had trustworthy people that you can process with. So you're trying to figure that out with God. God, do you share this? Do you talk with the other angels about this? Did you tell Gabriel? Did you it's just between me, right? Always remember the problem is not the problem. She also said he doesn't need to expose our sin when we recognize it and bring it to him. Perhaps she's right. Exposing sin, recognizing sin, this is a distraction. It's taking you in the wrong direction. It is, you have to have everything just right in order to be okay before God. It's really the road of self-righteousness. That's what religious perfectionism is. I've got to keep my life together. And you and I say you and I, because it's all of us. We need to take the journey Paul had to take on where he realized whether he was great or whether he fell apart. He's like, it's all rags. It's all rags. Paul had to learn how to embrace his weaknesses. And he also realized his victories. Like, yeah, I used to boast in that, but now I'm learning to boast in my infirmities. I'm boasting in weaknesses. And so my feedback for you, assignment for you, is learning to be loved in the midst of the anger, in the midst of the fear, in the midst of your flaws. God, you love me right now. Because that fear wants to come in and go, oh, he's going to expose you. He's going to expose you. And what does it do? It distracts you. You're over here about, is he going to expose my sin? And it distracts you from what you really need, a revelation of his love for you. God showed his love towards us while we were sinners. Did that change when we accepted Christ? Like, he's like, I loved you, but now I'm switching it. Judge, 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 judge. You better watch out. I'm coming after you. Is that the bait and switch you were given in Christianity? Man, he were given that. Or does he still love you, even in the midst of your bondage and struggle? But this all smells the symptoms of OCD. And I think we can all benefit from what I'm sharing here. So what your friend said, I'm not going to argue with your friend said. I think it's more the issue. You're very black and white and intense about your sharing. Yes, it's okay to share with God when you're struggling, but realize it sounds like it's a compulsion. You're doing it too much. And that when you need to shift how you relate to your anger, to let kindness and compassion flow through you. That's the fruit of the Spirit. The fruit of the Spirit is not how perfect you are in your sin walk, because no one's perfect. No one's even close to it. And those who act like it, they're self-righteous. So there's another sin. So let's stop sin chasing, because we Christians become obsessed with chasing sin, and we're constantly trying, and it's just another form of law. And in no way am I saying sin's okay. In no way am I saying, but this is creating a narrow, distorted focus. All these things, and here's her last sentence, all these things weigh on me, especially the fear of exposure and being a hypocrite. That reveals everything I'm talking about. The perfectionist's greatest fear is people are going to know the real me and know that I'm flawed. And what I would say is, let's do some exposure therapy. And exposure therapy is, let's face your flaws, look at them, and invite love, because you're tempted to fix every flaw. And what we're going to do is you're going to look at them and let love and grace cause you to allow to see yourself and stop avoiding yourself. Let love have its work. And you can use my resources. The one I would recommend definitely is God Loves Me and Love Myself. You can also look at 3 chapters in the Heart Healing Journey that talk about the loving acceptance of God's love, his patience, his kindness, how to operate. That's right smack dab in the middle of that book. But if this episode was a blessing to your life and journey, go to markdejesus.com. You can click on the donate, or you can become a regular subscriber, a regular partner, and any support is greatly appreciated. So, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise, going to let my voice heal some more. And by the way, I am working on a book. I finally landed into a book that I'm going to be working on, and it is about the OCD healing process. So pray for your brother from another mother, and just looking forward to further materials that are going to bless your life and your journey. But until the next time, I'm out.